A toddler found a German shepherd stuck in a fence. What he did next had everyone in tears. The whimper was faint, almost lost in the wind, but the moment 5-year-old Elliot heard it, his little heart knew someone needed him. What happened next would shock everyone and leave them in tears. If this story touches your heart, please like, share, and let us know where you're listening from. Elliot Morgan wasn't your average 5-year-old. While other kids his age preferred staying indoors glued to their tablets, Elliot found his joy in the embrace of nature. The woods behind his modest countryside home were his kingdom, his playground, and his escape. His mother, Rachel, often worried about his wandering, but even at his young age, Elliot had proven himself responsible, always returning before dark, always staying within the boundaries they had set together. "Just be back before sunset, my little explorer," Rachel had told him that morning, her tired eyes crinkling at the corners as she smiled. She had just finished another exhausting 12-hour night shift at the county hospital. Her nurse's uniform was wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her love for her son never dimmed. "I promise, Mommy," Elliot had replied, wrapping his small arms around her waist, his face pressing against her stomach. "I'll be the best explorer ever." Rachel ruffled his sandy brown hair, her heart squeezing with love and worry. Being a single mother wasn't easy, especially with her demanding schedule, but Elliot made every sacrifice worthwhile. Ever since his father had left them 3 years ago, it had been just the two of them against the world. "Remember, heroes always keep their promises," she whispered, their little ritual that had started when Elliot first became obsessed with superheroes. "And I'm your hero!" he beamed, his front tooth missing, making his smile even more endearing. That afternoon, with his mother finally asleep after her grueling shift, Elliot slipped into his red rubber boots, one size too big, but his favorite nonetheless, and set off into the woods. In his small backpack, he carried his survival kit, a juice box, a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in foil, a plastic magnifying glass, and his most treasured possession, a small flashlight his father had given him before disappearing from their lives. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and damp earth. Sunlight filtered through the canopy above, creating dappled patterns on the forest floor. Elliot jumped from one sunlit spot to another, pretending they were stepping stones across a river of lava. "Captain Elliot crosses the dangerous lava river," he narrated to himself, his voice high and excited. Nothing can stop him from saving the world. He had been playing for almost an hour, defending his imaginary kingdom from invisible monsters and discovering magical artifacts, interesting rocks and oddly shaped sticks, when the wind shifted and he heard it, a sound that didn't belong in the cheerful afternoon forest. A whimper, so soft and pained that at first Elliot thought he had imagined it. But then it came again, slightly louder, more desperate. Elliot froze, his heart suddenly pounding in his chest. In all his adventures, he had encountered many forest creatures, squirrels, rabbits, and once even a fox, that had watched him curiously from a distance before disappearing into the underbrush. But this sound was different. It wasn't the normal chatter of forest life. It was a cry for help. "Hello?" Elliot called out, his voice suddenly small in the vast woods. "Is someone there?" The whimper came again, now accompanied by a soft rustle from somewhere to his left, deeper into the forest than he usually ventured. Elliot hesitated, remembering his mother's warnings about not going too far. But something tugged at his heart, a feeling he couldn't ignore. "I'm coming," he called out, his decision made. Heroes didn't ignore cries for help. And today, Elliot was determined to be a hero. He followed the sound, pushing aside low-hanging branches and stepping carefully over fallen logs. The forest grew denser here, the trees standing closer together, their shadows deeper. The air felt cooler, and for a moment, a flicker of fear brushed against Elliot's courage. But then he heard it again, that plaintive whimper, now clearer, definitely coming from just ahead. Elliot pushed through a thick cluster of bushes, thorns scratching his arms, and emerged into a small clearing bordered by an old, rusted fence overgrown with weeds. And there, trapped in the tangled mess of barbed wire and metal posts, was a dog. Not just any dog, the largest, most magnificent German shepherd Elliot had ever seen. Time seemed to stop as Elliot took in the scene before him. The dog was massive, with thick black and tan fur that would have been beautiful if not for the patches matted with dirt. and what looked horribly like dried blood. "You're welcome," Elliot whispered, his voice thick with emotion he was too young to name. The dog attempted to stand, struggling with her injured leg and the weight of her pregnant belly. Elliot quickly moved to her side, placing his small hand on her shoulder. "Careful! You're still hurt." She paused, looking at him with what Elliot could have sworn was gratitude, before carefully testing her injured leg. She could put weight on it, but she favored it heavily, and Elliot could see that walking would be painful for her. "You can't stay here," Elliot decided, looking around the clearing. The sun was lower in the sky now, the shadows lengthening. Soon it would be sunset, and he had promised his mother he would be home before dark. "You need to come with me." The dog seemed to understand him, or at least she didn't resist when Elliot gently tugged at her collar, urging her to follow him back through the woods toward his home. "We have to be quiet," Elliot explained, as they slowly made their way through the forest. "My mommy doesn't know I'm bringing you home, and she's sleeping because she works at night, making people better." The journey was slow. The dog limped badly, occasionally stopping to rest, her breath coming in harsh pants. Elliot stayed by her side, offering encouragement and waiting patiently whenever she needed to stop. He shared his water with her, pouring some into his cupped hands for her to lap up, and even broke off a piece of his peanut butter sandwich, which she accepted gently from his fingers. As they neared the edge of the woods where Elliot's backyard began, the dog suddenly stopped. Her body tensed, ears pricked forward, alert and wary. A low growl rumbled in her chest, not threatening Elliot, but warning of something else. Elliot froze, his heart suddenly racing. "What is it?" he whispered, instinctively moving closer to the dog's side. The German Shepherd's eyes were fixed on something in the woods behind them. Elliot turned, scanning the trees and undergrowth, but saw nothing unusual. Still, the dog remained tense, her growl subsiding, but her posture alert. Then Elliot heard it, a faint crack, like a branch breaking underfoot. "Hello?" he called out, his voice small and uncertain. No response came, only the normal sounds of the forest, birds calling, leaves rustling in the breeze. After a moment, the dog seemed to relax slightly, though she kept glancing back as they continued toward Elliot's home. Maybe it was just a squirrel, Elliot suggested, trying to convince himself as much as the dog. But a strange feeling had settled in his stomach, a sense that whatever had made that sound wasn't as innocent as a forest creature. When they finally emerged from the woods into Elliot's backyard, the dog hesitated again, as if uncertain about leaving the cover of the trees. Elliot gently stroked her head, his small hand barely spanning the width between her ears. "It's okay," he assured her. "This is my house. You'll be safe here." The dog seemed to accept his word, limping after him across the neatly mown grass toward a small, weathered structure at the far end of the yard. His father's old storage shed, unused since the day David Morgan had walked out of their lives without so much as a goodbye. "This can be your house for now," Elliot explained as he struggled with the rusty latch on the shed door. "My mommy can't see you yet because she might be scared. You're really big, you know." The door finally swung open with a protesting creak, revealing a dusty interior filled with forgotten tools, old lawn equipment, and boxes of Christmas decorations. Cobwebs hung from the rafters, and the single window was grimy with years of neglect, but it was dry and, most importantly, hidden from the main house's view. "Wait here," Elliot instructed the dog, who had sunk gratefully onto the floor, her injured leg stretched out before her. "I'll get things to make it nice." He dashed to the house, slipping in through the back door as quietly as he could. His mother was still asleep. He could hear her soft snores from her bedroom down the hall. Moving with the stealth of a child who knows he's up to something his parent might not approve of, Elliot gathered supplies, an old blanket from the linen closet, a plastic bowl he filled with water, some leftover chicken from dinner the night before, and a small first aid kit his mother kept in the kitchen drawer. Arms full, he made his way back to the shed, where the German Shepherd waited exactly where he had left her, her eyes lighting up as he entered. "I brought you presents," Elliot announced, carefully setting down his treasures. He spread the blanket in the corner, furthest from the door, creating a soft nest. "This is your bed, and here's some water and chicken because you must be hungry." The dog watched with interest as Elliot arranged everything, only moving when he placed the bowl of water near her. One of her hind legs was caught in the barbed wire, the cruel metal digging into her flesh. Her sides heaved with each labored breath, and her head hung low in exhaustion or pain. Elliot couldn't tell which. But what struck him most were her eyes. As the dog sensed his presence, her head lifted slightly, and Elliot found himself looking into the most intelligent, soulful brown eyes he had ever seen. They weren't wild or vicious as he might have expected from a hurt animal. Instead, they were filled with something that the 5-year-old immediately recognized. Fear, yes, but also a desperate hope. "It's okay," Elliot whispered, his voice trembling slightly as he took a cautious step forward. "I won't hurt you." The dog watched him, her ears flicking forward at the sound of his voice, but she didn't growl or bare her teeth. Instead, she let out another soft whimper, as if responding to him. Elliot moved closer, step by careful step, talking softly all the while, the way his mother had taught him to approach Mr. Wilson's friendly golden retriever next door. "You're hurt. I want to help you. My name is Elliot. I'm 5 years old, and my mommy is a nurse. She fixes people when they're hurt. I want to fix you too." The dog's eyes never left him, tracking his every movement. As Elliot came within a few feet, he noticed something else. The dog's belly was swollen and round, in a way that didn't match her otherwise lean frame. "Are you going to have babies?" Elliot asked in wonder, remembering how Mrs. Peterson down the street had looked before she had her twins last spring. The dog's only response was a soft exhale, her eyes still fixed on him, wary but not threatening. Gathering his courage, Elliot crept even closer until he was just arm's length from the trapped animal. Now he could see the full extent of her predicament. The barbed wire had wrapped around her back leg, the sharp points digging into her flesh with every movement. Dried blood crusted the wound, and fresh blood seeped whenever she shifted position. A wave of sadness and anger washed over the boy. Who would do this to an animal? That's when he noticed the collar. Unlike the wounds, which could have been accidental, the collar told a different story. It was a sturdy leather band, military grade by the look of it. Not the kind you'd find in a pet store, but the metal nameplate attached to it had been deliberately damaged. Deep scratch marks obliterated what must have once been the dog's name and identification. Elliot's small fingers traced the scratches, his forehead wrinkling in confusion. "Did someone try to hide who you are?" he asked, more to himself than to the dog. The German Shepherd made no sound, but her eyes seemed to hold a secret, one that Elliot was too young to fully comprehend, but old enough to know was important. "I'm going to help you," Elliot decided, his voice firmer now, filled with a child's unwavering determination. "But you have to promise not to bite me, okay?" As if understanding his words, the dog slowly lowered her head back to the ground, her posture relaxing slightly. A silent agreement. Elliot set down his backpack and carefully examined the tangled wire. It was rusted and sharp, dangerous even to his small hands. But he couldn't leave the dog here, trapped and in pain. Setting his jaw in determination, he began to work on freeing her. "My daddy taught me about wires before he went away," Elliot explained to the dog as he cautiously began unwinding the barbed wire from around her leg. "He said you have to be careful, because they can hurt you." The dog lay perfectly still, only the occasional twitch of her injured leg and a soft whine betraying her pain when Elliot accidentally jostled the wound. "I'm sorry," he whispered each time, his little heart aching for causing her more pain. "I'm trying to be gentle." The task was more difficult than he had anticipated. The barbed wire was tightly wound, and his small fingers struggled with the sharp points. Several times, the metal bit into his skin, drawing small beads of blood. But Elliot persisted, driven by a determination that belied his young age. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, Elliot managed to free the last coil of wire from the dog's leg. "There you go," he announced triumphantly, sitting back on his heels, his hands dirty and scratched. The German Shepherd didn't immediately move. She lay there, watching Elliot with those intelligent eyes, as if assessing whether she could trust this small human who had freed her. Then, slowly, she lifted her massive head and, in a gesture that would forever be etched in Elliot's memory, extended her neck to gently lick the back of his hand where a particularly nasty cut was bleeding. Elliot gasped, not in fear, but in wonder. The dog's tongue was warm and gentle against his skin, the gesture unmistakably one of gratitude and perhaps even trust. She drank deeply, her thirst evident in the way she lapped up the water without pause. "You were really thirsty," Elliot observed. "Now, let me see your leg. My mommy says you have to clean cuts so they don't get infected." He stumbled slightly over the word, but knew its importance from the many times his mother had tended to his own scraped knees and elbows. With a gentleness that would have surprised most adults, Elliot opened the first aid kit and pulled out an antiseptic wipe. "This might sting a little," he warned, just as his mother always did. The dog watched him warily, but didn't pull away as Elliot carefully cleaned the wound on her leg. She flinched once when he touched a particularly tender spot, but instead of snapping at him, she only whined softly. "I'm sorry," Elliot whispered, his eyes filling with tears at causing her pain. "I'm almost done." Once the wound was clean, Elliot wrapped it with gauze, using nearly the entire roll from the first aid kit. His bandaging job was clumsy, the gauze uneven and loose in places, but it was better than nothing. "There," he declared, sitting back to admire his work. "All better?" The dog looked from her bandaged leg to Elliot's face, and then, to his delight, she slowly, deliberately licked his cheek, a gentle, thankful gesture that made the boy giggle despite the seriousness of the situation. "You're welcome," he said again, throwing his arms around her neck in a gentle hug. The dog stiffened momentarily, then relaxed, allowing the embrace. As Elliot pulled back, his fingers brushed against her collar again, and curiosity flickered in his eyes. "I wish I knew your name," he murmured, once more examining the scratched-out nameplate. "Everyone should have a name." The dog tilted her head, watching him with those expressive eyes that seemed to hold so many secrets. "I'll call you Hero," Elliot decided after a moment's thought, "because you're brave and strong, just like a hero should be." The newly named Hero didn't object, though Elliot had the strange feeling she already had a name, one that someone had tried very hard to make sure no one discovered. As the evening drew on, Elliot knew he needed to return to the house before his mother woke up for her shift. "I have to go now," he explained to Hero, who had settled comfortably on the blanket. "But I'll come back tomorrow, I promise, and I'll bring more food and water." Hero watched him go, her eyes following his small figure until the shed door closed behind him. Elliot leaned against it for a moment, his heart full of a strange mix of excitement, worry, and something else, a feeling of importance, of being needed in a way he had never experienced before. As he walked back to the house, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that, by helping Hero, he had stepped into something much bigger than a simple rescue. The scratched-out nameplate, the way Hero had tensed at the sound in the forest. There was a mystery here, one that his 5-year-old mind couldn't fully grasp, but somehow knew was significant. Just as he reached the back door, Elliot glanced over his shoulder toward the shed. For a split second, he thought he saw movement at the edge of the woods, a shadow that didn't quite fit with the gathering dusk. But when he looked more carefully, there was nothing there. Shaking off the uneasy feeling, Elliot entered the house, his mind already planning how he would care for his new secret friend. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly comprehend, was that by saving Hero, he had inadvertently placed himself in the path of a danger far greater than anything his young imagination could conjure. And somewhere in the deepening shadows of the forest, someone was watching. Someone who had been searching for a certain German shepherd for days. Someone who would stop at nothing to find her, and eliminate anyone who stood in the way. Elliot couldn't sleep that night. His mind kept returning to Hero, alone in the dark shed. Was she comfortable? Was her leg hurting? Did she have enough water? These thoughts spun in his head as he tossed and turned in his bed, the glow-in-the-dark stars on his ceiling offering little comfort. When morning finally came, Elliot was up before the sun, waiting impatiently for his mother to leave for her errands. Rachel had the day off from the hospital, but had a list of tasks to complete in town. "I'll be back by lunchtime, sweetheart," she promised, kissing the top of his head. "Mrs. Wilson will check on you, but you know the rules. Stay inside, don't open the door to strangers, and call you if there's an emergency," Elliot recited, having heard this 1,000 times before. Rachel smiled, though worry lines creased her forehead. "That's my responsible boy. I've left your breakfast on the counter. I love you to the moon and back." "Love you more," Elliot replied, their usual exchange, but his mind was already on the shed and its secret occupant. The moment his mother's car disappeared down the driveway, Elliot sprang into action. He raided the refrigerator, gathering leftover meatloaf, some cheese, and a carton of milk. He filled a larger bowl with fresh water and grabbed another blanket from the closet. Arms full, he hurried across the backyard to the shed. "Hero!" he called softly as he pushed the door open with his foot. "I brought breakfast." The German Shepherd was exactly where he had left her, curled up on the blanket. But as the door opened, she raised her head, her ears perking up at the sight of Elliot. To his delight, she wagged her tail. Just once, a small gesture, but it filled his heart with joy. "You remembered me," Elliot exclaimed, setting down his supplies. He approached her slowly, remembering how his mother always said to be careful around animals, even friendly ones. But Hero showed no sign of aggression. If anything, she seemed relieved to see him. Elliot knelt beside her, his small hand reaching out to stroke her head. "Did you sleep okay? Is your leg better?" Hero leaned into his touch, and Elliot took it as a good sign. Her eyes, so intelligent and deep, watched him as he set down the food and water. She ate hungrily, confirming Elliot's suspicion that she hadn't had a proper meal in days. As she ate, Elliot examined her bandaged leg. The gauze was soaked through with blood in places, and he knew he would need to change it. But first, he wanted to check something. "Can I look at your collar again?" he asked, reaching tentatively toward her neck. Hero paused in her eating, watching him, but making no move to stop him. Encouraged, Elliot's fingers explored the leather collar, feeling each scratch on the metal nameplate, trying to make out any letters or numbers that might remain. That's when he felt it, something odd embedded in the underside of the collar. Not part of the original design, but something added later. A small, hard rectangle, no bigger than his thumbnail, hidden beneath a flap of leather. "What's this?" Elliot murmured, his curiosity piqued. He worked his small fingers under the leather flap, trying to extract the object without removing Hero's collar entirely. After a few attempts, he managed to slide it out. It was a tiny metal chip, like the SIM card his mother sometimes had to replace in her phone, but smaller and with strange markings etched into its surface. A sequence of letters and numbers that meant nothing to Elliot's young mind, but which he instinctively knew was important. "Is this your secret?" he whispered to Hero, who had finished eating and was now watching him intently. Before he could examine it further, a sound outside made both of them freeze, the crunch of tires on gravel. Someone was pulling into the driveway. Elliot's heart raced. His mother wasn't due back for hours. Who could it be? "Stay here," he whispered to Hero, pocketing the strange chip. "And be quiet." Hero seemed to understand, lowering herself back onto the blanket, her body tense but obedient. Elliot slipped out of the shed, carefully closing the door behind him. He crossed the yard as casually as he could, trying not to look suspicious. As he approached the house, he saw an unfamiliar black SUV parked in the driveway, its windows tinted so dark he couldn't see inside. A man stood at the front door, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a long black coat despite the mild autumn weather. He knocked again, sharply, authoritatively. Elliot hesitated, remembering his mother's instructions about not opening the door to strangers. But something told him he needed to know why this man was here, a feeling that it was connected to Hero. Gathering his courage, Elliot approached the front porch. "Hello," he called out, staying at the bottom of the steps, ready to run if necessary. The man turned, and Elliot felt a chill run down his spine. The stranger's face was hard, his eyes cold and calculating as they assessed the small boy before him. A smile appeared on his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Well, hello there, young man," the stranger said, his voice smooth and controlled. "Is your mother home?" "She's busy," Elliot lied, instinctively knowing not to reveal that he was alone. "She's on the phone with the police right now." Something flickered in the man's eyes. Annoyance, perhaps, or suspicion. "I see. Well, I won't disturb her then. My name is Mr. Black. I'm looking for a dog that's gone missing in this area. A German Shepherd. Have you seen one around here?" Elliot's heart pounded so hard he was sure the man could hear it. "A dog?" he repeated, trying to sound casual. "No, I haven't seen any dogs except old Mrs. Wilson's poodle." Mr. Black studied him for a long moment, his gaze so intense that Elliot had to fight the urge to look away. "Are you sure about that?" "This dog is dangerous. It's very important that we find it." "Why is it dangerous?" Elliot asked before he could stop himself. The man's smile tightened. "It's sick. It needs special medicine. Or it could hurt people. That's why we need to find it quickly." Elliot thought of Hero, how gentle she had been even when in pain, how carefully she had taken food from his hand. She didn't seem sick or dangerous at all. "I haven't seen any German shepherds," he repeated, more firmly this time. Mr. Black reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card, extending it toward Elliot. "If you do see it, call this number right away. Don't approach it. It's not safe." Elliot took the card reluctantly, noticing there was no company name, just a phone number. "I should go inside now," he said, backing away slowly. "My mom doesn't like me talking to strangers." "Smart woman, your mother," Mr. Black commented, his eyes still fixed on Elliot. "Remember what I said about the dog. It's very, very important." Elliot nodded and hurried up the porch steps, fumbling with his key in the lock. He could feel Mr. Black's eyes on his back the entire time. Once inside, Elliot locked the door and ran to the living room window, peering through the curtains. Mr. Black stood on the porch for a few more seconds, his eyes scanning the property, lingering on the shed for a moment that made Elliot's breath catch. Then, apparently satisfied, he returned to his SUV and drove away. Elliot waited until the vehicle disappeared down the road before racing back to the shed. Hero was exactly where he had left her, but her posture had changed, alert, tense, her ears pricked forward. She knew something was wrong. "There was a man looking for you," Elliot whispered, sinking down beside her. "He said you're dangerous and sick, but that's not true, is it?" Hero's response was to lean forward and gently lick his hand, the one still clutching Mr. Black's business card. It was such a deliberate gesture that Elliot couldn't help but feel she was trying to tell him something. "You're not dangerous," he declared firmly. That man was lying. But why? Who are you really, Hero? The answer, Elliot realized, might be in the small metal chip he had found. But how could he read it? He needed technology, something his 5-year-old existence didn't provide much access to. Then he remembered his mother's old smartphone, the one she had replaced last year. She had kept it as a backup, and Elliot had occasionally been allowed to play simple games on it. It was kept in the drawer of her bedside table, still functional, though outdated. "I need to find out what this chip says," Elliot explained to Hero. "I'll be right back." He dashed to the house again, heading straight for his mother's room. Finding the phone was easy, but when he turned it on, he was faced with a password screen. Elliot bit his lip, thinking hard. What would his mother use as a password? After a moment, he typed in his birthday. The 6 digits that his mother always said changed her life forever. The screen unlocked, and Elliot let out a triumphant, "Yes!" But now came the hard part. How did he use this phone to read the chip? He examined the small piece of metal carefully. It didn't look like it would fit into the phone anywhere. After several frustrated attempts, Elliot realized he didn't need to physically insert the chip. He could search for the numbers and letters etched on its surface. Opening the web browser, Elliot carefully typed in the sequence SK9-457-GSDF. The search results loaded slowly. Most were meaningless to him, technical documents, product listings for things he didn't understand. But one result caught his eye. A news article from 2 years ago with the headline, "Military Working Dogs, the Silent Heroes of Our Nation." Elliot clicked on it, scanning the text as best he could with his limited reading skills. The article mentioned different types of military dogs and their roles. One paragraph stood out. Military working dogs, MWDs, are identified by unique codes, usually displayed on their tags along with their names. These codes typically begin with the letters related to their training specialty, SK for scent detection, AT for attack trained, etc., followed by their registration number. Elliot's eyes widened. SK9, Scent K9? Was Hero a military dog? He went back to the search results, modifying his query to SK9 military dog. This time, the results were more specific, confirming his suspicion that SK9 designated a scent detection military working dog. "You're a soldier dog," Elliot whispered to himself, amazed. But why would someone try to hide Hero's identity? Why would this Mr. Black lie about her being dangerous? Something wasn't adding up, and despite his young age, Elliot sensed that Hero wasn't just lost, she was hiding. And if Mr. Black was looking for her so intently, claiming she was dangerous when she clearly wasn't, then perhaps he was the real danger. Elliot pocketed the phone and the chip and raced back to the shed. He needed to make Hero safer, more hidden. The shed was too obvious, especially if Mr. Black decided to return and search the property. "Hero!" he announced as he burst into the shed. "We need to make you a better hiding place. That man might come back." Hero was on her feet when he entered, her posture alert, but no longer as pained as before. Her injured leg still favored, but she seemed stronger after food and rest. Elliot looked around the shed, considering their options. The structure was small but sturdy, with various items his father had left behind. Garden tools, old paint cans, a dusty workbench. Under the workbench was a large space partially hidden by boxes of Christmas decorations. "There," Elliot decided, pointing. "If we move some boxes, you can hide under there if someone comes." He began rearranging the boxes, creating a concealed space large enough for Hero to curl up in, if necessary. As he worked, he explained everything he had discovered. "You're a special dog from the army, aren't you? That's why that man wants to find you. But don't worry, I won't let him take you." Hero watched him work, her intelligent eyes following his movements. When Elliot had finished creating the hiding spot, he guided her toward it, showing her how to slip behind the boxes. "If you hear anyone coming, you hide here, okay?" Hero sniffed the space, then looked at Elliot with what seemed like understanding. She bumped her nose gently against his cheek, making him giggle despite the seriousness of the situation. "I wish you could talk," Elliot sighed, wrapping his arms around her neck. "Then you could tell me what happened to you." As if in response, Hero's ears suddenly pricked forward, her body going rigid. A low growl rumbled in her chest, not directed at Elliot, but at something outside. Elliot froze, listening. At first, he heard nothing unusual, just the normal sounds of the countryside. Birds, the distant hum of a tractor in the neighboring farm, the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Then he heard it, a faint snap, like a twig breaking underfoot. Someone was in the woods, watching the shed. "Hide!" Elliot whispered urgently to Hero, guiding her toward the concealed space he had created. To his relief, Hero obeyed immediately, squeezing herself into the tight space behind the boxes, her dark fur blending with the shadows. Elliot moved to the shed's small, grimy window and peered out, squinting to see through years of dust and cobwebs. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just the familiar trees at the edge of his backyard. Then, a shadow moved, just a flicker of movement that might have been a bird or squirrel, except Elliot knew better. Someone was there, watching from the tree line, watching and waiting. Fear clutched at his chest, but alongside it grew a fierce determination. Whatever secret Hero was hiding, whatever danger she was in, Elliot had made her a promise. He would protect her. And 5-year-old or not, he intended to keep that promise. Carefully, he backed away from the window and checked on Hero one last time, making sure she was well hidden. "Stay here," he whispered. "I'll come back later when it's safe." Hero's eyes gleamed from the darkness, watching him with what Elliot could only interpret as concern, not for herself, but for him. It was as if she wanted to protect him, even as he was trying to protect her. Elliot slipped out of the shed, making sure to close the door securely behind him. Instead of heading straight back to the house, he took a roundabout path, stopping to pick up a stick and pretend to play with it, as if that had been his purpose for being outside all along. As he played, he kept glancing toward the woods, trying to spot whoever was watching. He saw nothing definitive, but the feeling of being observed never left him. When he finally returned to the house, Elliot went straight to the living room window, positioning himself where he could keep an eye on both the woods and the shed. He pulled out his mother's old phone again, determined to learn more about military dogs and why someone might want to harm one. Time passed slowly as Elliot alternated between keeping watch and researching, though his limited reading skills made the latter challenging. By the time he heard his mother's car pulling into the driveway, he had learned little beyond what he already knew, that Hero was a special, highly trained dog who belonged to the military. But one thing Elliot was certain of, Hero wasn't dangerous, at least not to him. The way she had licked his wounds, the gentleness in her eyes, the protective way she positioned herself between him and the door when they heard noises outside, these weren't the actions of a vicious animal. No, if anyone was dangerous, it was Mr. Black and whoever was watching from the woods. And Elliot, small as he was now Hero's only defense against them. As Rachel called out his name, Elliot quickly hid the phone and the metal chip, plastering an innocent smile on his face. His mother couldn't know about Hero, not yet. Not until he understood what was happening and why Hero needed to hide. "Coming, Mom," he called back, casting one last glance toward the shed before running to greet her. The woods remained still and silent, but Elliot knew better now. Something was out there, biding its time, and somehow, in ways his 5-year-old mind couldn't fully comprehend, his discovery of a wounded German shepherd had placed him in the middle of a dangerous mystery, one that would require all his courage to solve. What do you think is Mr. Black's real identity, and why is he so desperate to find Hero? Share your theories below. That night, after his mother had tucked him in and turned out the lights, Elliot lay awake, listening to the sounds of the house. He waited patiently, counting the minutes in his head, until he heard the familiar creak of his mother's bedroom door closing. Rachel had the night shift again tomorrow, which meant she would be fast asleep soon, trying to get as much rest as possible before her grueling 12-hour shift. Elliot slipped out of bed, still fully dressed under his covers. He had planned this carefully, knowing he needed to check on Hero one more time before morning. The dog had been alone for hours now, and Elliot worried about her wound, her hunger, and most of all, the mysterious watchers in the woods. He tiptoed down the hallway, past his mother's room, where soft snores confirmed she was already asleep, and into the kitchen. There, he filled his pockets with dog treats he had sneakily purchased with his allowance money when his mother wasn't looking at the supermarket. He also grabbed a small flashlight from the drawer and some leftover chicken from dinner. The night air was cool against his face as he slipped out the back door, careful to close it silently behind him. The yard was bathed in moonlight, the grass silvery under the nearly full moon. Shadows stretched long and dark from the trees and bushes, creating hiding places for imaginary monsters, or real watchers. Elliot scanned the tree line carefully, searching for any sign of movement, any indication that someone was there, but the woods were still, the only movement coming from the gentle sway of branches in the night breeze. Still, Elliot didn't trust the apparent peace. He moved across the yard in a zigzag pattern, darting from one shadow to the next, just like the spies did in the movies his cousin Tyler sometimes let him watch when he visited. When he reached the shed, Elliot paused, listening intently before slowly opening the door. "Hero," he whispered into the darkness. "It's me, Elliot." No response came. The shed was silent, and for a heart-stopping moment, Elliot feared that Hero was gone, that Mr. Black or the watcher in the woods had somehow taken her while he wasn't looking. "Hero!" he called again, more urgently this time, clicking on his flashlight. The beam swept across the shed floor, illuminating dusty tools and cobwebs before landing on the hiding spot he had created under the workbench. Relief flooded through him as he saw two glowing eyes reflecting back from the darkness. "There you are!" You remembered to hide. "Good girl!" Elliot praised, moving forward and kneeling beside the hiding spot. Hero emerged slowly, her tail wagging softly at the sight of him. She looked stronger than she had that morning, her movements more fluid despite the injured leg. "I brought you more food," Elliot said, pulling out the chicken and treats from his pocket, "and I wanted to make sure you're okay." As Hero ate, Elliot checked her bandages. The bleeding had stopped, which he took as a good sign, though the wound still looked angry and painful. He wished he could take her to a vet, but he knew that wasn't possible. Not with Mr. Black looking for her, not with her mysterious military identity. After she finished eating, Hero settled down beside Elliot, resting her large head on his lap as he stroked her fur. "I have to go back soon," he told her softly, "but I'll come again tomorrow, I promise." Hero watched him with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand every word. Then, as if making a decision, she struggled to her feet and moved toward the shed door, looking back at Elliot expectantly. "What is it? Do you need to go outside?" Elliot asked, concerned. Hero whined softly, pawing at the door. Elliot hesitated. Letting her out seemed risky with potential watchers in the woods, but denying a dog's need to relieve herself was cruel, and he couldn't bear the thought of Hero being uncomfortable. "Okay, but we have to be super quiet and quick," he warned, cracking the door open and peering out to ensure the yard was still empty. Hero slipped out with surprising grace for an injured pregnant dog. Instead of heading toward the grass to do her business as Elliot expected, she moved purposefully toward the edge of the woods, stopping to look back at him, clearly wanting him to follow. "I can't go in there," Elliot whispered, suddenly afraid. "It's dark, and there might be bad people watching." Hero whined again, more insistent this time. She took a few steps into the trees, then returned to Elliot, nudging his hand with her nose. Elliot's heart raced. Every instinct told him not to go into the dark woods at night, alone except for an injured dog. His mother would be horrified if she knew, but Hiro seemed so determined, so urgent in her need to show him something. Just a little way, he decided finally. And then we come right back. With Hiro limping slightly at his side, Elliot entered the woods, his small flashlight cutting a feeble path through the darkness. They moved slowly, Hiro leading the way, pausing occasionally to ensure Elliot was still with her. After about 5 minutes of walking, they reached a small clearing, the same one where Elliot had first found Hiro trapped in the fence. But Hiro didn't stop there. She continued to the other side, where thick bushes grew in a tangled mass. Using her nose, she pushed aside some branches, revealing a small opening, a kind of natural tunnel through the undergrowth. She looked at Elliot, then at the tunnel, her meaning clear. "You want me to go in there?" Elliot asked, his voice trembling slightly. Hiro nudged his leg gently, encouraging him forward. Taking a deep breath, Elliot dropped to his hands and knees and crawled into the tunnel, Hiro following close behind. The passage was tight but navigable, the ground surprisingly dry and firm beneath his palms. After a few feet, it opened into another, smaller clearing, this one completely hidden from view by the surrounding bushes. And there, in the center of this secret place, was a military backpack, partially covered with leaves and dirt, as if someone had tried to hide it in a hurry. "What's this?" Elliot whispered, shining his flashlight on the discovery. Hiro moved to the backpack and pawed at it, looking from it to Elliot with an intensity that couldn't be ignored. With shaking hands, Elliot brushed away the leaves and dirt. The backpack was camouflage patterned, with multiple pockets and straps. A patch on the front bore the same code he had found on the chip in Hiro's collar, SK9-M457-GSDF. "This is yours," Elliot realized, looking at Hiro in amazement. "Or your person's." Hiro sat beside the backpack, watching as Elliot hesitantly unzipped the main compartment. Inside, he found clothes. Army clothes, he thought, recognizing the camouflage pattern from movies. There was also a water bottle, some energy bars, a compass, and a small first aid kit much more comprehensive than the one he had used on Hiro's leg. But what caught Elliot's attention was a leather pouch secured by a button snap. It was separate from the other items, tucked into a hidden pocket in the lining of the bag. Hiro whined softly as Elliot pulled out the pouch, her eyes fixed on it. "Is this important?" Elliot asked, his heart racing with the sense that he was discovering something significant. With careful fingers, he opened the pouch. Inside was a small notebook and a USB drive. The notebook was filled with handwritten notes and codes that meant nothing to Elliot's young mind. But tucked into the pages was a photograph, a picture of a younger Hiro standing beside a uniformed soldier, both looking proud and alert. The soldier's face was partially visible, showing a strong jaw and determined eyes. On the back, someone had written, "Sasha and me, Fort Benning, 2022. "Sasha," Elliot whispered, looking at Hiro. "No, Sasha," with wide eyes. "That's your real name, isn't it?" Sasha's tail wagged once, her eyes never leaving the photograph in Elliot's hand. "And this was your person," Elliot continued, pointing to the soldier. "Where is he now?" Sasha whined softly, the sound filled with such sorrow that even Elliot's young heart understood. Her soldier was gone, or at least not with her anymore. Elliot carefully examined the rest of the backpack's contents, but nothing else provided obvious clues about why Sasha was on the run or why Mr. Black was hunting her. The USB drive might hold answers, but Elliot had no way to access it without a computer. As he was about to zip the backpack closed, his fingers brushed against something hard sewn into the bottom lining. Curious, he felt around until he found a small slit in the fabric, just large enough to slip his small fingers inside. There, he found a slim metal case, about the size of a playing card. When he pulled it out, Sasha grew visibly agitated, pacing around the small clearing, her eyes darting to the woods beyond, as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. "What is it, Sasha?" Elliot asked, now using her real name. "Is this what they're looking for?" The case had a simple latch, which Elliot flipped open with his thumb. Inside was a memory card, similar to the one his mother used in her digital camera, but smaller and more sophisticated looking. It would bring Mr. Black back to their doorstep, with reinforcements. It would bring danger closer than ever before, and it would bring Sasha's puppies into the world under the most perilous circumstances imaginable. Do you think Elliot should trust his cousin Tyler with Sasha's secret, or is he making a dangerous mistake? What could be on that memory card? The days leading up to Saturday crawled by with excruciating slowness. Elliot maintained his routine of visiting Sasha multiple times a day, sneaking food to her and checking her wound, which was healing steadily. Each visit reinforced his growing bond with the military dog, but also heightened his anxiety about the mysterious watchers and Mr. Black's ominous warning. On Friday night, Elliot couldn't sleep. The memory card weighed heavily in his mind, its secrets taunting him. What information could be so important that people would hunt down a pregnant military dog to get it? Would Tyler even be able to help, or was Elliot placing too much hope in his tech-savvy cousin? Just after midnight, a sound jolted Elliot fully awake. A car engine, close by, idling. His heart pounding, he crept to his window and peered through the curtains. There, parked across the street with its lights off, was a black SUV. Even in the darkness, Elliot recognized it immediately as Mr. Black's vehicle. For several agonizing minutes, the SUV remained stationary, its dark windows revealing nothing of who might be inside or what they were watching. Then, silently, it pulled away, disappearing down the road without ever turning on its headlights. Elliot didn't hesitate. The moment the vehicle was out of sight, he threw on his clothes and sneakers, grabbed his flashlight, and slipped out of his room. His mother was asleep, exhausted from another long hospital shift. Moving with a stealth born of desperation, Elliot made his way out the back door and across the yard to the shed. "Sasha," he whispered urgently as he pushed open the door. "They're back." The German Shepherd was already alert, standing despite her injured leg, her ears pricked forward and her body tense. She had sensed danger even before Elliot's arrival. "Mr. Black was just outside in his car," Elliot explained, kneeling beside her. "I think they're watching our house. We need to move you somewhere safer." But where? The shed had seemed like the perfect hiding place initially, but now it felt exposed, vulnerable. If Mr. Black decided to search the property, it would be the first place he'd look. Elliot's mind raced through possibilities, discarding each one as quickly as it formed. "Maybe we could," he began, but Sasha suddenly stiffened, a low growl rumbling in her throat. Her eyes fixed on the shed door, her posture shifting from alert to defensive. Someone was outside. Elliot's mouth went dry, his heart hammering so hard he was sure it could be heard across the yard. Moving as silently as possible, he extinguished his flashlight and crept to the grimy window, staying low to avoid being seen. A beam of light swept across the yard, a flashlight, moving methodically from the house toward the shed. Behind it, Elliot could make out a silhouette. Not Mr. Black. This figure was smaller, more agile, moving with the practiced quiet of someone used to not being detected. "Hide!" Elliot mouthed to Sasha, gesturing frantically toward the concealed space under the workbench. For once, Sasha didn't obey. Instead, she positioned herself between Elliot and the door, her body tense, ready to spring. Despite her pregnancy and injury, she was preparing to defend him. "Please," Elliot whispered desperately. "You'll get hurt." Sasha remained unmoved, a silent guardian between a 5-year-old boy and whatever threat approached. The flashlight beam reached the shed, illuminating cracks in the weathered wood. The footsteps stopped outside the door. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the door handle began to turn. Elliot looked around frantically for a weapon, something to defend himself and Sasha. His eyes landed on his father's old baseball bat, leaning in the corner where it had been forgotten years ago. With shaking hands, he grabbed it, the wood smooth and cold against his palms. The door creaked open, and the flashlight beam swept into the shed, momentarily blinding Elliot. Sasha growled, the sound low and threatening. "Who's there?" A voice called out, young, female, unexpected. "I know someone's in here." Elliot blinked against the light, unable to make out the figure holding the flashlight. Sasha's growl intensified. "Please don't hurt us," Elliot said, his voice trembling but determined. "We didn't do anything wrong." The flashlight beam lowered, revealing a young woman, mid-20s, with short dark hair and alert eyes. She wore dark clothes and carried a small backpack. Not Mr. Black, not one of his men. Something else entirely. "Elliot Morgan?" she asked, her voice softer now. "And Sasha?" At the sound of her name, Sasha's posture changed. The growl subsided, replaced by a whine of recognition. She took a hesitant step forward, sniffing the air. "You know Sasha?" Elliot asked, confusion and hope battling in his voice. He didn't lower the bat. "Who are you?" The woman knelt slowly, holding out her hand, palm up toward Sasha. "My name is Alex. I worked with Sasha and her handler, Captain James Rivera." She glanced at Elliot, her expression softening at the sight of the small boy clutching a baseball bat too big for him. "I'm not here to hurt either of you. I've been looking for Sasha for weeks." "Are you with Mr. Black?" Elliot demanded, still not trusting. Alex's expression hardened. "Definitely not. Black works for the people who are trying to find Sasha and what she's carrying. I'm here to protect her, and now you too, since you're involved." Sasha had moved closer to the woman, sniffing her hand, her tail giving a tentative wag. Elliot watched carefully, knowing that Sasha's judgment of character was more reliable than his own. If she trusted this Alex person. "She knows you?" Elliot acknowledged cautiously, lowering the bat slightly. "We served together," Alex explained, gently stroking Sasha's head as the dog accepted her touch. "Special Forces K-9 unit. I was the team medic." She looked more closely at Sasha's bandaged leg. "You did this?" "It's not bad work for a kid." "My mom's a nurse," Elliot said, a hint of pride breaking through his fear. "I've watched her a lot." Alex nodded approvingly, then her expression grew serious again. "Elliot, I need to know. Did Sasha lead you to anything? Something hidden in the woods, maybe?" Elliot tensed again, his grip tightening on the bat. How did she know about that? Seeing his reaction, Alex continued gently. "It's okay. Sasha was trained to lead her handler, or someone she trusts, to her emergency cache if they were separated. Standard protocol for her type of mission." She glanced at Sasha's swollen belly. "Though this situation is far from standard." "There was a backpack," Elliot admitted reluctantly, "with army stuff in it." "And," Alex pressed, her eyes intent, "was there anything else? Something small, something hidden?" Elliot's free hand unconsciously moved to his pocket, where the memory card case still rested. Alex noticed the gesture, her eyes tracking the movement. "You found it?" she said softly, relief evident in her voice. "The memory card. Thank God." "What's on it?" Elliot demanded. "Why is everyone looking for it?" Alex sighed, glancing at the shed door and then back to Elliot. "That's a long story, and this isn't the safest place to tell it. We need to move Sasha somewhere more secure. Black and his men have been circling this area for days. It's only a matter of time before they search this property thoroughly." "How do I know I can trust you?" Elliot challenged, impressed by his own bravery in the face of this stranger. Alex smiled slightly, respecting the question. "Smart kid." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a similar memory card case to the one Elliot had found. "Because I have the other half of the evidence. Sasha was carrying one piece, and I have the other. Together, they prove that Black and his employer were selling military secrets and weapons to people they shouldn't have been. Sasha found out," Elliot guessed, the pieces starting to come together in his young mind. "Her handler did, Captain Rivera. He discovered the operation during our last deployment and gathered evidence, but they found out he was onto them. He split the evidence between Sasha's collar and his own possession. Insurance, in case something happened to him." Alex's voice grew tight. "And something did. The night before we were set to report everything to our commanding officer, James was killed in what was made to look like an accident." "They killed Sasha's person?" Elliot whispered, horrified. Alex nodded grimly. "Sasha witnessed it. She attacked one of the men involved. That's how she got that leg wound. But she escaped with the evidence. Military dogs are trained to return to base if separated from their handlers. But Sasha is special, extra smart. She knew base wasn't safe, so she went into hiding instead. And ended up in our woods," Elliot finished. "Which was actually lucky," Alex said. "If you hadn't found her, helped her, Black's men would have caught up to her eventually." Elliot processed this information, his young mind struggling with its weight. "But why is she, you know—" He gestured vaguely toward Sasha's swollen belly. Alex's expression softened. "That was unexpected. Before everything went wrong, James had arranged for Sasha to be bred with another top military dog. She was already pregnant when all this happened. It complicates things." A sudden thought struck Elliot. "Were you the one watching us from the woods?" Alex nodded. "I've been tracking Sasha for weeks." Something told Elliot that this tiny piece of technology was at the heart of whatever danger Sasha was in. This was why Mr. Black was searching for her, why someone was watching from the woods, why her nameplate had been deliberately scratched out. "We need to hide this," Elliot decided, carefully returning the memory card to its case. "And we need to get back before Mom wakes up." He repacked the backpack, making sure everything was exactly as he had found it, except for the photograph of Sasha and her soldier, which he slipped into his pocket along with the metal case containing the memory card. The rest, he decided, should stay hidden here in this secret place only Sasha knew about. After ensuring the backpack was well concealed again, Elliot followed Sasha back through the undergrowth tunnel and into the main woods. They made their way back toward his house in silence, both alert for any sign of watchers. The yard was still empty when they emerged from the trees, the house dark and quiet. Elliot guided Sasha back to the shed, his mind racing with questions and theories. "You're not just any military dog, are you?" he whispered as he settled her back on her blanket. "You know something important, something dangerous. That's why they're after you." Sasha looked at him with those knowing eyes, and Elliot felt a shiver run down his spine. He was only 5 years old, but he understood enough to know that he was now part of something much bigger than a simple rescue of an injured dog. "I'll keep you safe," he promised, hugging her neck. "And I'll figure out what's on this memory card, somehow." As he made his way back to the house, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Mr. Black knew where they lived now, and the watcher in the woods was still out there. Sooner or later, they would make their move, and when they did, Elliot needed to be ready. The next morning brought a new complication: rain. Heavy, relentless rain that transformed the yard into a muddy mess and made trips to the shed more noticeable. Each time Elliot crossed the yard, he left footprints in the soft mud, evidence of his comings and goings that would be hard to explain if his mother noticed. But he couldn't leave Sasha alone, especially not now that he knew more about her situation. So he waited until Rachel was busy on a phone call with the hospital, then slipped out the back door with a breakfast bundle for Sasha and a large umbrella to minimize the rain's impact. The shed was chilly and damp, the roof leaking in one corner, creating a steady drip, drip, drip that echoed in the small space. Sasha was awake when he entered, and to Elliot's delight, she was standing without favoring her injured leg quite as much. "You're getting better," he exclaimed, setting down the food he had brought. Sasha greeted him with a gentle nudge of her nose against his cheek, her tail wagging softly. But there was a tension in her body, an alertness that told Elliot she was still concerned about potential threats. "I brought your photograph," he told her, pulling the picture from his pocket and showing it to her. "And I kept the memory thingy safe too." Sasha sniffed the photograph, her tail wagging more vigorously at the scent of her soldier. The sight made Elliot's heart ache with questions he couldn't answer. Where was this soldier now? Why wasn't he with Sasha? And how had she ended up pregnant, wounded, and alone in the woods behind Elliot's house? As Sasha ate, Elliot sat cross-legged on the floor, thinking hard. He needed to learn what was on the memory card, but he had no way to access it. His mother's old phone wouldn't read it, and they didn't have a computer at home. The school had computers, but Elliot couldn't take Sasha there, and he was sure the teachers wouldn't let a kindergartner use a computer to read a mysterious memory card. Maybe Tyler can help, Elliot mused aloud. His 12-year-old cousin was something of a computer whiz, always talking about coding and hardware whenever he visited. But Tyler lived in the next town over, and Elliot had no way to reach him without asking his mother to arrange a visit, something that would require explanation. The sound of a car engine interrupted his thoughts. Sasha was on her feet instantly, a low growl rumbling in her throat. Elliot's heart raced as he rushed to the window, peering through the grimy glass. Relief washed over him when he saw it was just Mrs. Wilson from next door, arriving for her usual morning check-in while Rachel was busy. "It's okay, it's just our neighbor," he assured Sasha, who remained tense but stopped growling. "But I should go back before she comes looking for me." Elliot gave Sasha one more quick pat, promising to return as soon as he could. As he turned to leave, Sasha suddenly tensed again, her ears pricking forward, her gaze fixed on the wall of the shed that faced the woods. A chill ran down Elliot's spine. "Is someone out there?" he whispered. Sasha's growl was answer enough. Someone was watching again, even in the pouring rain. "Hide!" Elliot instructed, pointing to the concealed space under the workbench. As Sasha retreated into hiding, Elliot slipped out of the shed, making sure to close the door firmly behind him. Instead of heading straight back to the house, he made a show of picking up a toy truck he had left in the yard, as if that had been his reason for being outside. "Elliot Morgan, what on earth are you doing playing in this downpour?" Mrs. Wilson called from the back porch, her silver hair perfectly set despite the humidity, her floral dress impeccable as always. "Just getting my truck, Mrs. Wilson," Elliot called back, holding up the mud-covered toy as evidence. "Well, come inside this instant before you catch your death. Your mother would have my head if I let you get sick on my watch." Elliot obediently ran to the porch, but not before casting one last glance toward the woods. There, just for a second, he thought he saw a figure, different from Mr. Black, smaller and more agile, slipping between the trees. The rest of the day passed in agonizing slowness. Mrs. Wilson insisted Elliot stay inside, working on his kindergarten worksheets and watching approved children's programs on TV. All the while, his mind was with Sasha in the shed, and with the mysterious watcher in the woods. When his mother finally returned from her phone conference, tired but smiling, Elliot almost burst with the need to tell her everything, about Sasha, Mr. Black, the memory card, the watcher in the woods. But something held him back. What if she called the authorities? What if they took Sasha away before Elliot could discover the truth and clear her name? No, he decided he needed to handle this himself, at least until he knew more. But he needed help, and there was only one person he could think of who might provide it without asking too many questions. "Mom," he said as they sat down for dinner, "can we visit Cousin Tyler this weekend?" Rachel looked up from her plate, surprised. "Tyler? You usually complain that he ignores you to play video games." Elliot shrugged, trying to appear casual. "He showed me some cool computer stuff last time. I thought maybe he could teach me more." His mother smiled, clearly pleased at this apparent interest in learning. "I suppose we could drive over on Saturday. Your aunt has been asking us to visit anyway." "Great," Elliot exclaimed, perhaps a bit too enthusiastically. He quickly moderated his tone. "I mean, that would be nice." Rachel gave him a curious look, but didn't press further. She was too tired from her long day of remote hospital consultations to question his sudden enthusiasm for cousin bonding. That night, after his mother had gone to bed, Elliot made another trip to the shed, this time bringing one of his old stuffed animals, a plush dog that bore a passing resemblance to Sasha. "I thought you might like some company," he explained as he presented the toy to the real dog. Sasha sniffed the stuffed animal curiously, then, to Elliot's delight, gently picked it up in her mouth and carried it to her blanket, placing it carefully beside her as she lay down. "You're going to be a good mommy," Elliot whispered, noticing how her belly seemed even more swollen than before. He wasn't sure when dogs had their babies, but he had a feeling Sasha's puppies would be arriving sooner rather than later. "I have a plan," he told her, settling down beside her on the blanket. "We're going to visit my cousin Tyler on Saturday. He knows about computers. He can help us find out what's on the memory card, and then we'll know why Mr. Black is after you." Sasha listened attentively, her eyes never leaving his face, making Elliot feel that she understood every word. It was a strange feeling, having a conversation with a dog. But then again, Sasha was no ordinary dog. "Once we know the truth, we can tell my mom," Elliot continued, working out the plan as he spoke. "She'll know what to do. She always does." The confidence in his voice belied the uncertainty in his heart. What if the memory card revealed something terrible? What if Sasha really was dangerous in some way he couldn't understand? What if the truth put his mother in danger too? But as Sasha rested her head on his lap, her brown eyes full of trust, Elliot pushed those doubts away. Whatever secret Sasha was carrying, he would help her protect it until they knew what to do next. "We're going to be okay," he promised, stroking her fur. "Both of us." As he walked back to the house a few minutes later, the rain finally letting up, Elliot clutched the memory card case in his pocket like a talisman. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Tyler would know what to do with it. Tyler would help them solve the mystery. What Elliot didn't realize was that Saturday would bring far more than answers. "When I finally located her here, I needed to make sure she was safe before approaching. I saw you helping her, but I couldn't be sure if you were connected to Black somehow." "I'm not," Elliot said firmly. "I'm just a kid." "A very brave one," Alex acknowledged. "But now we need to move. It's not safe here anymore." As if to punctuate her words, Sasha suddenly tensed again, her attention snapping to the shed door. Outside, the unmistakable sound of a car engine broke the night's silence. Alex was on her feet instantly, peering through the window. Black SUV, 2 men getting out, one is black. She turned to Elliot, her expression deadly serious. We're out of time. Is there another way out of this shed? Elliot shook his head, panic rising in his chest. Just the door. What do we do? Alex's mind worked rapidly, assessing their limited options. Your mother, she's asleep in the house? Yes, night shift tomorrow, Elliot confirmed. Okay, new plan, Alex said decisively. We make a run for the woods, to the cache Sasha showed you. It's our best chance. They won't expect us to head that way. But Sasha can't run fast, Elliot protested, looking at the pregnant dog with concern. She'll manage, Alex assured him, though worry lined her face. She's tougher than she looks. She knelt in front of Elliot, placing her hands on his shoulders. This is serious, Elliot. These men are dangerous. They won't hesitate to hurt anyone who gets in their way. Do exactly as I say, understand? Elliot nodded solemnly, clutching the baseball bat tighter. Good. When I open this door, we move fast and quiet toward the trees. Stay low, stay close to me. If I tell you to run, you run, no questions, no looking back. Got it? Got it, Elliot whispered, fear and determination warring in his small chest. Alex glanced at Sasha, who was already positioned by the door, alert and ready despite her condition. She knows what to do. Military dogs are trained for this. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small handgun, checking it quickly before tucking it into her waistband. Last resort, she explained, seeing Elliot's wide eyes. I used to be a soldier, too. The footsteps outside grew closer, flashlight beams sweeping the yard. Any moment now, they would reach the shed. Now, Alex whispered, easing the door open just enough for them to slip through. Stay low, move fast. The trio slipped out into the night, Elliot's heart pounding so hard he was sure it would give them away. They hugged the shadow of the shed, then made a dash for the tree line when the men's backs were turned. They were halfway to the woods when a shout cut through the night. There! By the trees! A flashlight beam caught them, and then another. Alex pushed Elliot forward. Run! They crashed into the underbrush, branches whipping at their faces, the sounds of pursuit close behind. Alex led the way, with Elliot in the middle and Sasha bringing up the rear despite her injury. The pregnant dog moved with surprising speed, driven by instinct and training. Which way to the cache? Alex gasped as they plunged deeper into the forest. Elliot pointed, trying to get his bearings in the darkness. That way, I think. Behind them, the men's voices grew louder, more urgent. A beam of light sliced through the trees, narrowly missing them. Faster, Alex urged, helping Elliot over a fallen log. They ran until Elliot's lungs burned, until his legs felt like they might collapse beneath him. Just when he thought he couldn't go another step, they reached the clearing where he had first found Sasha. There, he gasped, pointing to the thick bushes concealing the tunnel to the hidden cache. Alex nodded, urging him forward. You first, then Sasha. Elliot dropped to his hands and knees, crawling through the tunnel with Sasha close behind. Alex followed last, pulling branches across the entrance to conceal it. In the hidden clearing, they collapsed, fighting to catch their breath. The sounds of pursuit continued around them, but the men seemed to have lost their trail. They'll circle back, Alex whispered, keeping her voice low. We need a plan. Elliot's mind raced. My mom, he suddenly realized. If they don't find us, they might go to the house. They might hurt her. Alex's expression was grim. They might. Black isn't above using leverage. We have to warn her, Elliot insisted, panic rising in his voice. We will, Alex promised. But we need to be smart about it. If we rush back there now, we'll lead them straight to her. Before they could discuss further, Sasha suddenly let out a soft whine, different from any sound Elliot had heard her make before. She circled restlessly, then lay down, her breathing becoming labored. Alex was at her side instantly, her trained medical eye assessing the situation. No, she breathed. Not now, not here. What is it? Elliot asked, though a part of him already knew. The puppies, Alex confirmed, her voice tight with concern. Stress and exertion from the chase must have triggered labor. She's going to give birth, soon. Elliot's eyes widened in a mix of wonder and terror. Here? Now? "We don't have a choice," Alex said, already pulling supplies from her backpack. "Once labor starts, there's no stopping it." Outside their hiding place, voices called back and forth. The men were regrouping, planning their next move. They were surrounded, trapped in a tiny hidden clearing with a dog about to give birth, pursued by armed men who wouldn't hesitate to kill them all for the memory card tucked in Elliot's pocket. "What do we do?" Elliot whispered, feeling very small and very young in the face of such danger. Alex looked at him, her expression a mix of determination and compassion. "We deliver these puppies, we protect Sasha, and we find a way to get that evidence to the right people. One step at a time." Sasha whined again, more urgently this time, her body tensing with the first real contraction. "It's starting," Alex said, positioning herself beside the laboring dog. "Elliot, I need your help. Can you be brave a little longer?" Elliot nodded, pushing aside his fear. "I can be brave." "Good," Alex said, giving him a quick, reassuring smile. "Because Sasha needs us both now." As the night deepened around them, with danger lurking just beyond their fragile sanctuary, Elliot found himself part of a miracle. The bringing of new life into the world, even as others sought to end it. His small hands, which had first freed Sasha from the barbed wire fence, now helped welcome her puppies into a world far more complex and dangerous than his 5-year-old mind could fully comprehend. The first puppy arrived just as thunder rumbled in the distance, a storm approaching to match the one they were already caught in. Small, wet, and seemingly lifeless at first, the tiny creature began to move as Alex carefully cleared its airways and Sasha licked it clean. "A boy," Alex whispered, a smile breaking through her tense expression. "Healthy?" Elliot watched in awe as the tiny puppy, no bigger than his hand, squirmed toward its mother. Outside, rain began to fall, the patter on the leaves providing cover for the sounds of their hiding place. "The storm is good," Alex said, noticing Elliot's attention shift to the weather. "Makes it harder for them to track us." Before Elliot could respond, Sasha tensed again, another contraction beginning. Time seemed to blur as they helped her through the birth of the second puppy, and then the third, all while straining to hear any approach from Black and his men. The third puppy was smaller than the others, struggling more to take its first breath. Alex worked quickly, her trained hands massaging the tiny chest, encouraging it to breathe. "Come on, little one," she murmured, and Elliot found himself holding his breath, willing the puppy to live. Finally, a tiny squeak announced success, and Alex handed the struggling newborn to Sasha, who immediately began cleaning it with gentle, thorough licks. 3 healthy puppies, Alex announced softly. 2 boys and a girl. Despite their perilous situation, Elliot couldn't help but smile. "They're so tiny," he whispered, watching as the puppies squirmed against their mother, seeking warmth and milk. Sasha looked exhausted but alert, her eyes moving between her newborns and the entrance to their hiding place, maternal instinct warring with her training as a military dog. "She wants to protect them, but she knows we're still in danger," Alex explained, seeing Elliot's questioning look. "She's incredible!" The rain had intensified, turning into a proper storm. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating their small sanctuary through gaps in the foliage. Thunder followed almost immediately, loud enough to mask any sounds of pursuit. "We need to contact help," Alex said, pulling a satellite phone from her backpack. "I have people who can extract us, but they'll need time to reach this location." "What about my mom?" Elliot asked, the worry he had momentarily forgotten in the wonder of the puppy's birth rushing back. Alex hesitated, clearly weighing their options. "We need to warn her, but we can't risk leading Black to her either." She thought for a moment. "Does she have a cell phone?" Elliot nodded. "But I don't know the number." "That's okay," Alex assured him. "I can work with that." She began typing on her satellite phone, her fingers moving quickly over the keypad. "I'm sending a message to my contact. They can alert local police to do a welfare check on your house, just enough to scare Black off without tipping our hand." "Will that keep her safe?" Elliot asked, not entirely understanding, but desperate for reassurance. "It's our best option right now," Alex said honestly. "The priority is keeping this evidence secure and getting all of you to safety." She nodded toward Sasha and her puppies. "But Sasha?" he began, looking toward where the German shepherd was still grappling with Mr. Black, her teeth locked on his arm as he fought to bring his gun up for another shot. "She's fighting for her puppies," Alex called back, still struggling with the second man. "Honor that! Go!" Elliot knew she was right. With the puppies clutched to his chest, he looked desperately for an escape route. The tunnel entrance was blocked by the fighting, but the small clearing had another possible exit, a gap in the bushes on the far side, barely visible in the storm. Taking a deep breath, Elliot plunged toward it, using his body to shield the tiny puppies as branches clawed at his face and arms. Behind him, he heard a gunshot, then another, followed by a yelp that made his blood run cold. "Sasha!" he cried out, nearly turning back. "Keep going!" Alex's voice rang out, strained but alive. "She's okay! Keep moving!" Trusting Alex because he had no choice, Elliot pushed through the gap, finding himself in another part of the forest he didn't recognize. Rain poured down in sheets, plastering his hair to his forehead and making it difficult to see. The puppies squirmed in his arms, their tiny bodies already chilled from the rain, despite his efforts to shelter them. He needed to find cover, somewhere to keep the puppies warm and safe until he knew what had happened to Sasha and Alex. Looking around frantically, Elliot spotted a massive fallen oak, its upturned roots creating a natural shelter from the worst of the rain. He crawled into the space, curling his body around the puppies, trying to share his warmth with them. They were so small, so helpless, their eyes still sealed shut, their pink mouths opening in silent cries for their mother. Elliot felt tears mixing with the rainwater on his face. "It's okay," he whispered to them, though he knew it was a lie. Nothing was okay. "Your mom is coming. She's really brave. She'll find us." Time passed in strange lurches, minutes that felt like hours, moments stretched by fear and cold, and the responsibility of 3 new lives depending on him. The storm continued to rage, lightning illuminating the forest in harsh flashes, thunder shaking the ground beneath him. Elliot strained to hear any sounds of pursuit over the storm, but there was nothing except rain and wind and the occasional crack of a branch giving way under the onslaught. Had Sasha and Alex escaped? Had they been captured? Were they even alive? The puppies were growing weaker, their movements less frequent, their tiny bodies cooling despite Elliot's best efforts to warm them. He knew with a clarity beyond his years that if he didn't find help soon, they wouldn't survive the night. "I promised I would protect you," he whispered, a sob catching in his throat. "I promised, Sasha." Just as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Elliot heard something, a faint sound, different from the storm, a whine, familiar and desperate. "Sasha!" he called out, hope surging through him. The whine came again, closer this time, followed by the sound of something moving through the underbrush. Elliot tensed, ready to run again if it was Mr. Black or his men. But then a familiar shape emerged from the darkness, Sasha limping badly, her fur matted with blood and mud, but alive. "Sasha!" Elliot cried out, relief flooding through him. "You're okay!" The German shepherd staggered toward him, her eyes fixed on the puppies in his arms. Her maternal instinct had led her to them through the storm, through pain and exhaustion. "Look, they're here," Elliot said, carefully shifting to show her the puppies. "They need you." Sasha collapsed beside him under the fallen tree, her body trembling with exhaustion. Elliot gently placed the puppies against her belly, where they immediately began to root for milk, their instincts guiding them even in their weakened state. Sasha curled around them, licking them clean again, her eyes never leaving her offspring. "Where's Alex?" Elliot asked, though he knew Sasha couldn't answer. Had she escaped too, or had she sacrificed herself to give Sasha time to find her puppies? The answer came minutes later, as another figure appeared through the rain. Elliot tensed again, but it was Alex, clutching her arm, where blood seeped through her torn sleeve. "Thank God," she gasped, dropping to her knees beside them. "You made it." "What happened to Mr. Black?" Elliot asked, his voice small but steady. Alex's expression hardened. "He won't be following us anymore. Neither will his colleague." She didn't elaborate, and Elliot didn't ask for details. Some things, even in his current state of accelerated maturity, were better left unspoken. "I called for backup before the fight," Alex continued, examining Sasha and her puppies with gentle hands. "A team is on the way, but the storm is slowing them down. We need to get somewhere warm and dry, especially for these little ones. Once these little ones are stable enough to move, we'll make our way to an extraction point. My people will meet us there." "And then what happens?" Elliot asked, his voice small. Alex's expression softened. "Then we get this evidence to the right authorities. the ones not compromised by Black and his employer. Justice for Captain Rivera, safety for Sasha and her puppies. She touched Elliot's shoulder gently. And you go home to your mother, a hero who helped bring down some very bad people. It sounded simple when she said it like that, but Elliot knew it wouldn't be. Nothing about this night had been simple. As if confirming his thoughts, a sound reached them through the rain. A branch snapping, too close to their hiding place to be coincidental. Sasha's head shot up, her body tensing despite her exhaustion. Alex was on her feet instantly, gun drawn. "Stay with Sasha," she whispered to Elliot. "Keep the puppies quiet." She moved toward the entrance of their hideout, her movements silent and practiced. Lightning flashed again, and in that brief illumination, Elliot saw a shadow outside. Someone had found the tunnel. Before Alex could react, the branches covering the entrance were thrust aside, and a beam of light cut through the darkness, landing directly on Elliot's terrified face. "Well, well," came a familiar voice. Mr. Black, his tone smooth, despite the rain soaking his expensive coat. "What do we have here? Did anyone predict that Sasha would give birth during their escape? And who do you think is more dangerous, Mr. Black or Alex?" Time seemed to freeze as Mr. Black's flashlight beam illuminated the small hidden clearing. In that suspended moment, Elliot saw everything with crystal clarity. Alex half-crouched, her gun raised. Sasha struggling to her feet despite her exhaustion, positioning herself between her newborn puppies and the threat. The three tiny wet bundles squirming on the makeshift nest of leaves and Alex's jacket, and Mr. Black, his expensive coat soaked through, his cold eyes taking in the scene with calculated precision. "Lower your weapon," Mr. Black commanded Alex, his own gun now visible, pointed steadily at her chest. Slowly. Alex didn't move. "How did you find us?" Mr. Black's lips curved into a humorless smile. "Thermal imaging. Even through a storm, body heat is hard to hide." His gaze shifted to Sasha and her puppies, then to Elliot. "The boy has something that belongs to my employer. Hand it over, and perhaps I'll be generous." "You won't hurt a child," Alex challenged, though doubt flickered in her eyes. "I prefer not to," Mr. Black agreed, his tone disturbingly casual. "Unnecessary complications, but my orders are clear. Retrieve the evidence at any cost." His attention turned fully to Elliot. "The memory card, boy. Now." Elliot's hand moved instinctively to his pocket, where the small metal case still rested. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it over the rain and thunder. "Don't," Alex warned him. "Once he has it, he has no reason to keep any of us alive." Lightning flashed again, briefly illuminating another figure behind Mr. Black. A second man, larger, carrying what looked like a heavy rifle. They were outnumbered and outgunned. "You're trying my patience," Mr. Black said, his voice hardening. "The memory card, or I start with the dog." He shifted his aim toward Sasha, who growled deep in her throat, her body trembling with exhaustion and protective fury. "Wait!" Elliot cried out, unable to bear the thought of Sasha being hurt. "I'll give it to you." "Elliot, no!" Alex protested, but her voice held resignation. She knew as well as he did that they had no real options. With shaking hands, Elliot reached into his pocket and pulled out the small metal case. As he did so, a loud crack of thunder shook the forest, so powerful it seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. In that same instant, something extraordinary happened. Sasha, drawing on reserves of strength that should have been depleted by her labor, launched herself at Mr. Black. The suddenness of her attack, combined with the thunder's distraction, caught him off guard. His gun discharged, the bullet embedding itself in the ground as Sasha's weight slammed into his chest, sending him sprawling backward into the tunnel entrance. Alex reacted instantly, diving toward the second man, who was now trying to bring his rifle to bear. She tackled him around the waist, driving him backward into the rain-soaked bushes. "Run, Elliot!" she shouted over the storm and struggle. "Take the puppies and run!" Elliot stood frozen for a split second, overwhelmed by the sudden violence. Then his survival instinct kicked in. He scrambled toward the newborn puppies, gathering them carefully in his small arms. They were wet and slippery, mewling pitifully at being separated from their mother. "Where?" Elliot asked, looking around at the dark, rain-soaked forest. They were lost, at least from his perspective. Alex checked a small device that resembled a compass. There's a ranger station about 2 miles north of here. Unmanned this time of year, but it should have basic shelter and supplies. Can Sasha make it? Elliot asked, noticing how the dog struggled to even lift